Unfortunately, we don't need reminding that we live indeed in an age of terror. There are so many events only in the last few weeks where people have lost their lives to terrorism. Media is clearly a very important way in which freedom of expression is exercised. Not only people have the right to speak, not just through media, but media is still the important way in which, in a broader context, people have access to information and can spread information. We now have social media, we have people who are not professional journalists and not part of any professional media house that can also reach large audiences. This age of terror adds, of course, many of its own challenges. Media can have a very positive effect in overcoming differences in society, in teaching people what is going on in other parts of the world. But media can also incite to hatred and violence. Media can exacerbate people's prejudices. Media can create fear. And unfortunately, fear and dramatic events sell better, are more attention-grabbing than trying to explain complicated contexts and explain perhaps backgrounds to events.
The media, now more than ever before, needs to be aware of its strength as provider of information, instigator of public debate, and watchdog. As the age of terror brings new challenges as well as added responsibility on how news must be reported, the media must actively promote responsible journalism to avoid fueling violence and extremism. The media must report the facts, tell both sides of the story fairly and accurately without bias, so that the audience can make up their own opinions of the news. Provide a platform for all voices to be heard, shying away from sensationalism, glamorizing or dramatizing terrorist acts for headlines which incite and unwittingly play into the hands of the terrorists. Act responsibly in the choice of words, use of language, the emphasis placed on race and religion when describing perpetrators, as this causes mistrust and anxiety among communities.
I think we shouldn't allow those people who would like to divide people to remind us shadows of Cold War. We shouldn't resist, because freedom of expression is freedom for people, is our basic human right. And I think we are able, and if we are responsible for some measures, practical measures, to protect our values and our freedom.
Hello, my name is Lasha. It's so good that you raised an issue of media, because I grew up in the city called Tbilisi, which is a very multicultural area, and we've been always proud of living in a place where there were so many cultures, and we really enjoyed celebrating each other's, festivities and so on. But when the crisis started in the Middle East, quite some people actually started going to fight in Syria. And while our country used to be so united in diversity, I could see in media that the way media would portray that particular ethnic minority was so negative. Suddenly we turn into this united society, into a society of a majority and of that minority group, when only reporting that particular area and people living there would receive was negative.
I think what you said, is really important. Mainstream media does need to be more responsible. Can you imagine a world where, if suddenly a Christian committed a crime and it said that a white Christian man went and shot 300 school children in America? The fact has happened, but that person is not described as being white or as being Christian. And I think that is what is causing some of the terror, contributing to the terror, because certain parts of certain communities are being singled out. I think we do need to move away from that singling out certain communities, because I think it also feeds the terrorists when you do that constantly.
There is a problem, and mainstream media, unfortunately, spread hate speech against people from the Caucasus, mostly Muslims. And it's very difficult to eradicate, to combat this hate speech and these negative connotations in ordinary people mentality. It's a big issue. It's a big issue in my country. It's a big issue in other countries. We are trying to do with this. We are trying to think how to promote diversities. I think it should be more, it's not just professional issue, but professional community must think about it. And I'm happy that International Federation of Journalists, European Federation of Journalists pay serious attention to that. If all professionals and if all media actors could agree, probably we could try to squeeze hate speech from our everyday practice. It's not that easy. Unfortunately, many media insist on this hate speech devoted to different groups of people because of business, because of some different interests. Like many colleagues in the European and the International Federation, we do believe that self-regulation of journalism and self-regulation of media field is the only way to overcome these negative trends.
My name is Ekaterina Kuznetsova. I'm a journalist from Russia. I work for an NGO called European Youth Press, where we stand for the freedom of media. But unfortunately, I believe there are not enough organizations that, in fact, protect journalists. There are international organizations like Committee to Protect Journalists or Reporters Without Borders, and they're doing an excellent job. But my question is, when it comes to local protection, when you're a journalist on the field and something is happening to you, how do you protect yourself? Do you think there is need for more organizations that will actually work on this kind of protection?
I would be happy to share with Russian colleague details of measures to support journalists in danger in Russia, in our region. Because many journalists suffer. We have a death list of deceased people, which is more than 350 people since 1993. It's a lot, and just small percentage of those deaths, disappearance, killings, unclear deaths have been properly investigated. And the problem in Russia, in many countries, I guess, in Eastern Europe, is that society doesn't understand that journalism is a public good. Society is not supportive enough. So problems of journalists and danger is are not problems of society as a whole. And I think it's a big challenge now, and I hope we could do something with that.
Protecting journalists is such a huge problem. In my country, the way we have tried to protect our journalists is really by securing newsrooms. Can you believe it? You actually have to have security to a newsroom because you don't want the police to turn up at any time and have access to your newsroom. But there is no support, there is no other way apart from a media house actually making the commitment to do that. So if the police is looking for a journalist, what do? You make sure that you have access to very good lawyers, and it costs money. And I think that governments, in developing countries have also become quite sophisticated in understanding that you don't necessarily have to just pick up journalists and lock them up, but that you can use pressure, legal pressure. So you take them to court, you sue them for every single story, and that you end up paying a lot of money just to operate as a media house. I think my final statement basically is that it's true that media is a business. So when you're in business, you have to make money, you have to make a profit, because you have to pay journalists to find the news. It's a huge challenge. How do you put out news that is objective, that is well-researched, when you just don't have the money? And how do you make the money? That is the challenge. Thank you.